Alright, so today's very short video here is basically to give you guys a guide on how to write a good explanation paragraph that is befitting of your answers. Okay, so because we've been getting quite a few queries here and there about how exactly do I craft a good explanation paragraph. Is it the same as what we will use for other subject areas? Do we use the peel format, right? A peel writing frame? Actually, in all honesty, it is a good writing frame. So if you're actually very used to that, you will realize that a good paragraph that actually constitutes most of the components of a good paragraph. So let's move on and take a look how you can write a good geographical paragraph. Now, before we begin, right, actually what's important here is to always have at the back of your head, right, this idea of what exactly is the purpose of writing this paragraph. Okay, what is your aim? What exactly do you want to achieve with your answer that you've written down, right? Are you trying to answer a particular question? I think you are, right? Because none of us will write geographical stuff for fun. So it's normally to answer a question. So what exactly does the question want? So in class and what we've done so far in terms of your assessments, you will realize that as we do walkthroughs, post-analysis of your performance, we always break down the question, okay? And we've gone through this several times about how you annotate the question, how you circle your command words, how you think about what are your key points that you will want to put in, how you draft an answer in terms of the point form annotation before you actually start drafting the answer itself. So these are the things that you're actually aiming to do. You're aiming to answer the question to your best abilities based on what you can retain or based on what you've understood about the content, about the topics, about the processes. So you need to remember this all the time. What is the aim of you writing this paragraph? What do you want to achieve? If you're able to have a clear idea of what you want to achieve, end of the day, when you're done with the paragraph, as you review it, you take a very quick look at it, you will understand, or at the moment in time, you will know whether it's a good paragraph or not. The other common problem is, I know you know your stuff, okay? You guys always tell me, I know my stuff, I understand what is going on, I know what needs to go in. Yeah, but I can't take your word for it, you see? So what do I have when I'm marking? As a marker, the problem I have is I don't have you standing in front of me. So what I can base my understanding on is largely what you can write down. So if you do not have the ability, or you did not have the full extent of your knowledge displayed, together with all the linking ideas, the processes, the logical thought that goes in your head, if you don't put that down in words, I wouldn't be able to see it. And I cannot give you the benefit of the doubt because I know you. Because at the end of the day, when we're going for the national exams, right, nobody knows who you are. So they have no idea what you know. Okay, I know what you know. I know what you don't know as well, but I know what you know. So for me, it is actually still possible for me to project that, but it's not being fair to you. So you need to learn that because I can only mark what is there. Okay, so it is important not to try your very best to dumb everything down, but to write down what is essential to help me understand, to help me come to a conclusion that you know your stuff. Okay, so I can believe you, right? Trust me, we want to believe you. We try, yeah. So you need to prove to us you know your stuff. Now, how do you go about doing that? First and foremost, you got to create the impression that, hey, you are not the lady at the coffee shop, the uncle, the auntie at the coffee shop talking about coincidentally talking about a geographical idea. So you need to use disciplinary literacy, also known as geographical terms. Okay, so if you're going to talk about a specific geographical idea, process, or concept, right, that we have covered in class, you've seen in your text, you've seen in some of the stimulus that you have, use the geographical term. Okay, you can of course explain it in your own words. You know, some of you have this amazing ability to do descriptions, but it doesn't show that you are a geography student. So you need to prove to me that you are not the auntie sitting at the coffee shop having a discussion with your child, with your whoever, your friend. You are the geog student who knows geographical stuff. So use geographical terms when you're dealing with the concept. So if you can find a geographical term that covers what you're talking about, that should come out constantly in your explanation paragraphs. So step 1, disciplinary literacy. Use geographical terms. Step 2, explain. Bear in mind, I don't have the luxury of having you standing in front of me and asking you what exactly do you mean when you say this, when you write this down, okay? So what is it that you want to write down? What exactly is the function of this thing that is in the question, okay? How does it work? How does it look like? How would you, if you're experiencing this, is something you can experience, what would it feel like to be a person experiencing this geographical idea, concept, or process? Okay, what is the function of this process? Once again, must I really say or highlight everything? No. Seriously speaking, you don't have the time to write every single thing down. So once again, you need to plan. So this is why when you are, before you actually move on to even writing anything at all, the annotation, the processing of the question is very, very important. You need to process the question. You need to figure out what you cannot finish writing, what you cannot finish putting down, and what is essential. Essential items must be there, because if you're missing essential items, I will either not be able to find the logical sequencing, and therefore your explanation will seem disjointed. Okay, I won't say it's wrong, it's just really disjointed. And if I need to fill in the blanks, like I mentioned earlier, we do not have the luxury of giving you the benefit of the doubt. Okay, so whatever is missing is incomplete, that point that you want to put down, that you have in your head, okay, I believe you have it in your head, but I can't see it. So then that point will fail. Okay, that point will be taken as non-existent or incomplete. So you will probably not get credit for that particular area that you were trying to describe. Okay, so explain. Please remember, highlight everything that is essential. And I want to highlight this again. We've said this. If you've been with me from the beginning, you would hear this repeatedly. Logical sequence, right? Everything they write down in your geographical answers has to follow logic sequencing. Okay, if it's not logical, don't write it down. It really makes your answer look really bad, right? Step three, provide examples. Okay, no proof like real proof. So if you can have an example of a place that uses this process, of a group of people that enjoys this item, of how it actually tangibly helps a particular location, this is really, really important that you put it down for me, because this shows me that not only are you able to have a good grasp of what is going on, you are able to apply it. Okay, it's like application into a real world situation, or selecting a real world situation where this is happening and letting me know it's there. So providing examples is a master stroke. Sometimes it is not always possible, because within what you've learned, you may not have a very clear example, but most of these processes and most of the concepts that we deal with are anchored in examples. So if you know your textbook well enough, you know your notes, and you know the resources that we've given you well enough, you should be able to find examples. Okay, once again, no proof like real proof. Step 3 is to provide examples in your explanation paragraphs. Now lastly, have you answered the question? So this is the moment where you, before you continue to finish up the linking part, right, you take a look at what you've written down. Does your example make sense? Does the explanation of the geographical term that you listed down make sense? Okay, if it makes sense, good, then we can move on to the final component here. What exactly did the question ask for? Did it ask for application? Did it ask for just a pure explanation? Did it ask to identify and explain? What exactly did it ask for? So if you are looking at something that says identify and explain, check your answers. Have you identified a geographical term first? If you have not even provided the identification, you're not going to get your marks. Okay, because you have not answered the question, right? So that is very, very important. Okay, so what is this ATQ component? Basically, this linking your knowledge, whatever you've written down so far, into the fundamental concept of the question. What does question want? The question normally doesn't just want to know your knowledge. Okay, these kind of recall questions on its own, they have a place, but they are not a big thing anymore. So always take a close look. What exactly does the question want? Okay, having the information now is vital. I do not want you to walk away from this thinking that, oh, I just have to have a link. Some of the explanations can be a bit airy-fairy, is fine. No, it is not fine. You do need to be very firm and very secure in your geographical knowledge. In your expressing of your geographical knowledge, it has to be very clear. It has to be very, very secure. On top of that, you need to then make that link. Okay, that is where the money is. So the devil is in the details. Have you answered the question? Before you write your final component, the link, the couple of sentences that we always have, 1 or 2 will be enough in a 3 to 4 mark question. You need to remember, have you answered the question? take a closer look, right? Craft it so that this last two sentences that you put down will answer that question. Let's do an example, okay? So using something in the Sec 2 syllabus, chapter 8, right? There's a portion about how people decide, or how developers decide whether it's public or private developers. How do they decide location of housing? So a simple question, a 3-4 mark question like this, asking you to explain the cost of land, how the cost of land affects the location of housing. So general area, we're still looking at the placement of housing, location. We're going to look at the idea of how cost of land. Now, if you think of it very carefully, cost of land is not one of the key geographical terms. So first things first, what's the point? Right? What's the point? What is the geographical term that relates to this area? The geographical term in your syllabus, in the Sec 2 syllabus for this matter, is the idea of land prices. So the term land prices should be in your answer. Bear in mind, we talked about this, right? You need to use your disciplinary literacy. So the languages, the terminologies that is specific to this component here need to be highlighted. Okay, so I wouldn't continue to talk about cost of land. I will continue and will switch over, pivot, and use the correct term, land prices, because this shows that I am not a layperson. I am a geography student. So what kind of explanation do you need to cover, right? If you think about the question itself, it talks about how do you decide, right? So there are a couple ways of thinking about it. There are a couple ways that you can approach this question. Of course, you can talk about what happens if land prices are high. What will happen to the cost of the development, okay? Will it then become very expensive? If it becomes very expensive, then logically, next question to ask would be, then what will happen to affordability? This idea of, I can afford this house. Maybe then you cannot afford the house, or maybe people in your socio-economic status strata will not be able to afford this house. Will it mean that everybody in the world cannot afford this house? No, right? If you're Elon Musk, you can afford any house in the world. You can afford a house on the moon, probably, right? But then for the general population, affordability becomes an issue. So land prices are really high. What happens to affordability? Then what will happen to everybody who cannot afford housing then? If this is the general type of housing we're looking at for the general population, and yet about 50% of all humans on earth cannot afford this, then what can you do, right? What are the options that you have, right? Will you all go and build your own slums? Is that an option? Okay, or is the government control so lax, right? And in this particular case, are there people who can actually control this or make this better? Who is in charge of land prices then? In most situations, most countries, would the government be the one who actually has overall power that controls land prices? Right? If they do, would that be important? Okay, because you know from experience that there are two main developers. You have your public developer and your private developers. So your public developers will be your government. Okay, so they will be in control of land prices. Then they can actually do something about these land prices. They are now escalating at too high. What about an example? Do you know of any places where land is really expensive? Okay, expensive to the point where you actually don't see much housing. Use examples around you, right? But they must be real, and I must be able to check them out online. So if you tell me, this street in downtown Singapore called Kandahar Street, right? It's so expensive that nobody lives there. So if I go and Google Kandahar Street and I see that there's housing there, then your example is gonna fail, right? So give me examples. Cheap land, expensive land. Are there slums as a result of this? You know that this particular slum that you study about is at the fringe of the city, because it is they cannot afford the land in the city, so these people use the abandoned land right outside the city and they build their own slums, right? Give me examples, give me names, give me terms, give me specific locations. That is what we're looking for when we talk about examples. Finally, before you end off and you move on to the next question, take a quick review of what you have written. Does it ATQ? Do you need to add a couple of sentences to link it back to the question itself? Remember, if you don't ATQ, right, you don't get your marks, okay? Because then you're just vomiting information out. We don't want a memory machine. We have a computer for that, right? We have a tape recorder. We have the voice recording app for that. We don't need you to memorize and regurgitate information without processing. The power of a human being is in the processing of information, not in the memory of information. So although content is important, This is where the money is, okay? Whether you are able to answer the question. So do a quick review. If the content you put out is living on its own, on an island in isolation, right? This is where you need to put in that 1 or 2 sentences, bring it back, bring it in, let it link back to the question, and let it work for you. And so that's it. It's a very, very short video. So if you would like to review it, right, go back, replay, take a look at the section that you are a little unclear still. And I hope this will help you in your answering of short answer questions and improvisation of better explanation paragraphs. Okay, so I will see you in the next shorts. Have fun.